Hi everyone, this is Weasel D from Grim Press, and today I'm going to be looking at a supplement for your campaign that deals with traps. It's called Traps, Trammels, and Triggers, Nefarious Devices for 5e. It's available over at DriveThruRPG as a watermark PDF for $4.99, or you can pick up a premium or standard color book as well. Challenge your players with dastardly traps and puzzles, created for the world's most popular role-playing game. It contains over 100 traps with 150 more variants ready to be dropped into your D&D 5e campaign with little preparation. Um, one of the things you need to consider is that D&D isn't always about, fighting the orcs and fighting the goblins. Sometimes the puzzles and the other things that your DM puts in front of you help build the overall challenge. And I really think that traps are underutilized by a lot of game players, a lot of game masters. So that's why I wanted to take a look at this the supplement here and see how it could help us. I did take a look at some of these reviews. Looking through them here, it's got 5-star reviews. Alexander says, I love traps. I think every dungeon worth a damn should have some, but I always find the official ones boring, dull, and predictable. I mean, that's true. I mean, there's only so many times that, a thief can try to pick a lock and have it be a needle trigger trap or have a plate they step on or a tripwire. I mean, those things just get boring over time. And it's nice to see a supplement like this, which just gives you so many choices on how to build different kinds of traps. Cody says it's a great supplement, easy to find something for any situation. Steven's saying, what a fantastic book. Traps are well organized and devious. That's really important. They're not boring. Super easy to find, whatever fits the circumstances. It's a valuable GM resource. No, I absolutely agree, and I think that this is something as we go through this a little bit, you'll agree with me that it's well done. All right, so let's jump right into it. Let's take a look at the PDF itself. Um, we've got an introduction here that tells us a bit about the definitions and things we want to work with. An illustrator is a master trap setter, typically the ones looking to protect their riches or prized possessions. I'd never heard that word before I read this, but I kind of like it. It breaks these traps down into mechanical ones that have a physical impact or magical ones. And there are 4 categories as they define the traps. They've got the alarms, which are typically benign, and they serve to alert an illustrator that their goods are being tampered with. A deterrent, which is designed to discourage or mislead a creature from approaching an area or reaching an object. Obstruction, which prohibits or inhibits a creature from taking an action or reaching a location. And offensive, when they're usually deadly in nature, and the intent of these traps is to maim or disfigure a creature when triggered. And most of the traps that you see in games tend to be that 4th category. So when we go through this, I'm going to pick out a couple that I like from each one of these things and show you how else they can impact into your adventures. Most sinister traps are designed to infect, poison, maim, or disfigure rather than kill outright. Again, you don't always have to kill your players, but you can put obstacles in front of them that give them a challenge in unique kind of ways, and that's kind of what we're looking for here. Multiple layers or combinations of traps. Right? It doesn't have to be one trap. It could be traps in several different rooms. It gets to a point where thieves walk into a room and they get so they can tell where the traps are going to be. They're always on the chest that you find, or they're always down, the single cord, or where you're approaching where the boss might be. So you want to spread those things out, and you want to provide opportunities to keep the players guessing on what might actually be happening. So the way this is set up here, it looks like you've got these 4 categories, and then you have the traps within them. And what you're seeing here inside the parentheses is the variance. So for any given trap, there's a couple different ways to make it unique, which change the effects and sometimes the severity level of what's going to happen to the players should they trip those traps off. The introduction here also talks about, how well you can conceal the traps and the devices detection. But I got to point out, right, one of the things that I liked about this supplement is that there are traps in here that are not meant to be concealed. It's almost like there's something there, there's something wrong, but it's not common enough that you think that what you're looking at could be detrimental to you. And I've got one of those in store that I'm going to go over with you and explain why I think it's pretty cool. You can also scale that yourself as a DM. You know, in addition to the variants that are presented here, you could always take it up or down a notch depending on the overall level of your parties. So let's start off with, we'll do these in order, kind of the same order that they have them here in the book, with alarms being first. The ones that you just want to give somebody that's being tampered with. And I wanted to focus on this one, the Sentry Raven. I thought this was pretty cool. It's counted as a mechanical trap because the Raven's not magical. But I like the opening paragraph here. It explains to you what it is. It says that not all alarms and traps require construction or magical prowess. The Sentry Raven is a clever bird that has been well trained by someone's proficient in animal handling. So in this particular case, you know, you get this bird flying around, and it just looks like it's, you know, maybe it's a little strange in the area that you're at, but you don't initially think of a bird as being a trap. In this particular case, though, the raven itself has some magical effects cast on it that allows it to act like a watchdog. You know, sure, you see a goblin sitting there, you know, holding a spear in front of a door, and you know he's a guard. But when you see a raven flying around, your first thought isn't necessarily that something bad's going to happen. So what's going on here is that there's some additional variants, that if you, instead of just the raven, that maybe you scale it up a little bit and they can fill it in with an eagle or hawk or a different kind of bird. And depending on the bird that you have here, it's how far away the creature can fly, and then whether or not the bird is able to detect something going on. In this case, what happens is the the bird has the keen eyes and is able to, because of the effects that have cast on the magical assistance, it's able to let the person who's protecting the area know that there's something going on here and that there are threats in the area. So this is one of those things where it's just kind of an alarm, and it's just a way to kind of set up the story a little bit, and you know, add a little bit of a variation to what might be going on. Um, Next, I want to take a look at a deterrent. So deterrents are, you know, where failure doesn't necessarily mean that you are going to take direct damage, but it's going to keep you from accomplishing your goal. In this case, this tumbler counterbalance. Um, the way this one is set up is that there's this special combination of notches for a very specific key, right? So if you have the key, you open the lock, no problem. But if you're trying to pick the lock, which your players are going to want to do unless they've already gotten the key, the difference here is that what happens is that the the lock is designed in such a way that a single person can't open it up. So in this case, first your lock picking person has to realize that this lock can't be opened unless you have the specific key. So in order to make that work, you need an additional pick to maintain the tumble orientation, and it requires a third hand and a second creature. Now that's what I thought was pretty cool here. You know, most times when you have a lock to be picked, it's only one character is going to do it, whoever is proficient in those thieves tools. So this is an opportunity here for a character who may be proficient and doesn't often get a chance, or it makes it kind of interesting when you have a non-proficient character trying to you know, stick a lock pick in there and hold a tumbler in place, and they kind of work cooperatively in order to open this lock up. And it requires a couple different checks here. You have to do a sleight of hand check, the second creature gets involved, otherwise the tumbler gets reset. So it's one of those things that it's going to eventually get through and solve, but it requires a little bit more than just a standard lock picking. A couple variations that come with this one. In this case, you can make the trap a little more difficult by just making the double pin version. All the attempts are made with disadvantage, and then this greased version here is that this is one of those ones where you know, given time, anybody can pick any lock, right? So this makes each additional attempt harder for the next attempt to be successful. And again, both of these first two that I looked at here, neither one of them is doing damage to the players, but they're putting some obstacles in the way that you wouldn't normally have. So that's the one reason I really like this one. I like the whole class of deterrence. Actually, I think it's a great way of just again putting some of those challenges in there, and it's one of those things where failure doesn't always mean that somebody's going to die or get damaged. Failure can just be slowing things down or keeping you making the objective a little harder, but ultimately you're going to get through and you're going to get to that. The next one I want to take a look at is this escape tunnel. Now, this I really like, right? Because I don't think that there's enough opportunities for the bad guys to get away. I think a lot of times you fight to the death, and then or you when you do decide someone wants to run away, they make a roll and they get out of combat, and you tell the story, and away they go. But something like the escape tunnel is something that you could plan for ahead of time, right? You could go into the battle knowing that the villain is going to escape and build that into the storyline. How many times have we seen where, the hero and the villain meet up with each other for the first time, the villain gets away, the hero goes after him, they may have a second time where they meet with each other until they have the final battle. So in this case, the escape tunnel is going to help with that storytelling, right? It's used, and again, this is kind of the planning. If you can either plan for it ahead of time or just have it in your back pocket in case they want to go out here. So you got this escape tunnel, and it starts off. Maybe it's relatively simple, right? You just got some rocks and some roots as the villain is escaping out through the tunnel. You could have a variant where as they're running through, the villain is knocking down the braces, and the tunnel is collapsing behind them. Gives your players an opportunity to make some rolls there, maybe avoid getting knocked down, maybe avoid taking some damage. Kind of that frustration where maybe they're getting through it, and then at the end the tunnel collapses, but the villain's just on the other side. Maybe he just stands there and taunts them afterwards, and they know they can't get to him, but he's there, and that's a great opportunity for some interaction as this tunnel collapses. And look at these other variances. I mean, they do get a little bit more dangerous. You could have a situation here where, as they're moving through the tunnel, they're taking damage, and so they have to make a decision. Do they press forward and keep going after him, or do they retreat? So it's entirely up to them whether they're going to be damaged or not, right? It's not a true or false. It's not a binary. It's how important is it for me to push on, and what's the risk to us, or how do we overcome that? And the last one here is this poison plume tunnel and this rat variant. Ideas that just different ways to change these things up. The poison plume is kind of similar to the demon's tunnel in that as you go through, you're taking poison damage. One of the differences here, though, is because you have to be able to breathe fresh air or you stay poisoned. So it's not just a whether I should press through or not, but now you have a time constraint on you as well as the damage, because the longer you're there, the worse it's going to get. So you can't slow things down. You have to make the decision of how do you act quickly. The last variant here actually releases some rats, so it sets up an encounter while at the same time you're still having through the escape tunnel. Last thing I figured I'd focus on here is one of the offensive traps. And you'll notice that with each of these cases, I try to pick something that was kind of out of the ordinary, not something you would typically see. And trust me when I tell you that this supplement is full of these kinds of traps. And once you start reading through it, you'll find yourself inspired to make your own variants of those, or to come up with your own challenging traps for your players and for your encounters. So I like this plague rat trap a lot, right? It uses it's a biological trap. So in this particular case, what's going on is that you've got these plague rats, and normally you got them in the bottom of a pit where you see them or they're kept in cages. So what they're showing you here is a couple different ways where the rats could be. This is a situation where maybe the rats are there, but you have to go through that area, or that perhaps the rats kind of fall out from the walls or the holes around the area that they're in. And this is one of the things where rather than just detecting a trap, oh, I see a trip line, the thing that you're checking for is an intelligence or a nature check, right? You're looking at this and saying something's wrong with those rats, and it's not your rogue who's making that choice. It may be your druid, it may be your cleric, it may be your wizard. Somebody else is recognizing, other than the rogue, that there is a trap that you have to deal with here. And many of the traps are like that. The traps are designed to challenge the whole party, not just to challenge your rogue with double proficiency who can easily figure out these traps as they find them, right? Spread that love around a little bit. Um, in this particular case, what happens is the rats come out and they have a material impact on the pacing of the game. In this case, the effect is a disease that starts to add levels of exhaustion to your player, something that's typically underutilized. And the disease is also messing with their short and long rests. So you've got disease is one of the things that you don't see as often in traps. But the effect here is a longer term effect. It's not one and done. Something happens and it's over. You get bit by these plague rats, and that it's gonna stay with you. It's going to impact as you're taking long rests and short rests. And now you've got a secondary objective because you have to deal with the fact that you've got this effect. You either press through, or you're going to have to focus on that and deal with that disease with a lesser restoration spell, or with the paladin's lay on hands ability. You also have the variant here. In this case, the rats aren't just the plague rats, that they up the ante a little bit, and they actually curse the players as well. So it's going to take a little harder to get rid of, and this is an ongoing thing, right? So they keep getting one level exhaustion, one level exhaustion, one level exhaustion. At some point, you just fall over and say, you know what, I can't do it anymore. These rats are really taking their toll on me. So this is a kind of trap that again affects your pacing with the game. Maybe you set these things up when you know that it would normally be a safe area, and players are taking their short rest and their long rest, and they're not really being challenged with the physical fights. But imagine if you had something like this set up before a fight that they're going to win easily, but now they're going into that fight with a couple levels of exhaustion, or not being able to fight at their full efficiency. And that's the kind of thing that, again, it could take a normal encounter, and it can just spike it up a little bit for you. No pun intended here with the metal spiked pit, in order to increase the challenge to the players. And that's really what this whole thing is about. You want to be able to offer opportunities to your players that they don't get the same in every kind of game. Traps, trammels, and triggers will definitely give you that opportunity. It'll give you a wide variety of options, and I look forward to putting some of these into my own campaigns, and I think you should too. If you have any questions, you can stop by our Discord channel or stop by our website. Thanks for listening.